is the first couple songs are free, then they take a commission on what you sell through the platform. So that's one way to monetize it. And then I think you can, what they just launched was an advertising program. So it's like, when we did it with Tim, since we're the first person, they were trying to promote the model, they blasted us out to like 300 million people. So it did super, super well. Wow. Now, if you were to do it today, they don't have any incentive to get behind your specific thing unless you're like a well-known person. So what I like to do is like, okay, how can I align my incentives with a platform so they're going to promote the hell out of me? So you see this, like Facebook will roll out these new programs, and it's the first couple sort of beta users or early users of the platform. Facebook will throw tons of impressions at, you'll get included in the media rollout for the thing, and you'll do really, really well. And then everyone else follows, but they don't realize that the low-hanging fruit has sort of already been picked.
Okay, interesting. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about org charts around growth hacking. So, you know, most larger businesses, like maybe they have a CMO, there's a VP of marketing, but what I've heard advocated for recently are like cross-functional teams around growth hacking. So maybe you'll have someone from product, maybe you'll have someone from marketing, maybe you'll have someone from sales, someone in retention, the customer side of the house. Do you have any strong preferences on how to create that org chart? Because you can potentially end up in a situation where there's just lots of dotted lines and nobody knows what's really going on.
Yeah, so a couple things jump out at me. One, I think marketers have always had really great insight into product. Not just insight into product, but also they're sort of translators because they know like what the media will be interested in. They interact with customers and influencers more often, so they sort of know like what will get people excited. But the problem is they're often kept out of the loop until the thing is done, right? It's like, oh, let's meet with the marketing team. We're launching this in a month, right? And so the marketing team can't be that. There's only so much they can do because most of the paint has already been put up and the cement is dried and on and on. So I think part of it is just better communication organizationally. It's not like it has to go through these people and they have to approve it and blah, blah, blah. But like, look, like what Amazon is saying is like, it doesn't matter who you are, what team you're on. If you want to launch something, you have to think about the actual launch process from day one, because if you don't build that into the product, it's going to be very inefficient to bolt it on. So I think that's a big part of it. I think the other reason why you've seen startups utilize growth hackers much better than, say, a Fortune 500 company is that I find it very odd that the first, like marketing and growth is one of the most important things that a company can do, right? That's your relationship with your customer and the outside world. And the first thing that companies do when they get successful is say, sorry, we don't have any competency in this area, let's outsource it to an outside agency. And again, an outside agency doesn't have the political capital, nor necessarily the incentives to tell you that your thing sucks and that it should change, right? And they're kept out of the loop. And more importantly, you are taking that crucial relationship and externalizing it. And so startups don't have that luxury, right? Airbnb raises like $30,000 from Y Combinator. They're not going to hire a marketing agency at $20,000 a month like the next day. That's just not possible. So the team has to be internal. And so I think like one of the responses I've got from the book from marketers is like, oh, should we hire a growth hacking firm? And it's like, I think you're missing the point. This is somebody who should be inside the company. This is why startup founders are often really great marketers, because they live and breathe the product and they know what's great about it and they know what people want. So I don't know if that totally answers your question.
Yeah, so let's dig into nuts and bolts a little bit. So typically, I mean, in a large organization like American Apparel, for example, you wouldn't have like the chief growth hacking officer reporting into the CEO. So where would you put him? Would you put him in product? Would you put him in marketing? Would you put him in, you know, in support or retention? Where would you locate that? Because it's got to report into someone.
Sure. Well, and what I think was really great about American Apparel is being vertically integrated. My office as the marketing team was like 15 steps away from the sewing floor. So I could walk out and see stuff that people were making, like like people didn't understand, like a lot of American Apparel's basics, like the kids' clothes or underwear, these are made from like leftover scraps that are cut from the t-shirts, right? And that came because a creative director was walking the floor one day and saw this waste and had an idea. And so I think another part of it is, as operations are decentralized, you miss some of the serendipity that comes from that. But I would say, I think growth hacking is probably since it's so cross-discipline, right? It's product development, it's sort of e-commerce or online, it's marketing, it's also public relations. I think it's much more. I would say it's less about a specific person and more about inculcating these sort of this mindset across the discipline. Like everyone should be thinking about it, and no one should be afraid to say, "Hey, is this something that people actually want?" It doesn't matter how much we've invested in it. Like, let's change it. And I think most of all, the leadership of the company has to be thinking this way. Most of all, like there's that saying that marketing is when you lie to your customers, market research is when you lie to yourself. I think that is actually the dominant attitude inside companies, and it's very antithetical to the growth hacking mindset.
Interesting. At Lead Pages, we don't have, I hate the term senior leadership team.
Sure.
Our senior leadership team is actually called the growth team.
Oh, that's
where
great.
all VPs and C-level executives.
Because isn't that like what CEO's job is to not grow the company, right? It's like, no, I'm just trying to slowly ride this thing to a stop. Like your job is to grow the company. So if you're not thinking about this and your staff is not also getting that message from you on a daily basis, you're probably sending the wrong message.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. So I heard a nuance in your voice when you said branding. You didn't say branding, you said branding. So let's talk about branding for a little bit. So I think for a lot of startups, there is way too much emphasis on branding. A lot of times people spend like multiple thousands of dollars getting a logo, and then they ask all their friends, and then everyone has an opinion. And my opinion on this is like, Google's logo is a font, Facebook's logo is a font, the New York Times logo is a font. Like just go into a word processor, type it out, don't pick some Comic Sans, take a picture, bam, you've got a logo. But when and where do you think branding is appropriate in the growth of a startup? And is there a growth hacky way to think about branding?
Yeah, I think what I would say is it's not that branding is worthless. It's just not worth the premium that most people put on it, right? So like, I love that Apple example where Apple's like, oh, let's just make white headphones. This is a way to brand, but it's very cheap and very efficient, and it's sort of just thinking outside the box. So I like that. I would say, like, I think one of the things, like companies are like, okay, we've got our logo, we've got our name, let's spend a bunch of money on t-shirts, right? Like, who's ever signed up for a startup because they saw some dude out for a jog wearing a t-shirt, right? Like, I think these things matter when you have a certain scale, and they can sort of be iteratively done and built over time. But fundamentally, branding is a result of, do people love your product because it's really good, you know? Like, I think what branding matters at a startup, like, don't pick a dumb name, don't pick a name that's embarrassing for people to say, don't pick a domain name that's hard to remember. Like, I see this all the time where they're like, our domain is blah, 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 .ioux, and it's like, what is this? Like, how am I gonna remember this, right? So I think it's about handling the basics early on, and then branding can become a bit of a luxury when you have growth. But fundamentally, is Airbnb's brand value in the fact that it's a great platform, it's easy to use, they send this photographer out to your house, this sort of stuff, or is it that they sponsored the Rio Olympics? Like, what is doing the heavy lifting on branding there? It's rarely the things that marketers like doing, right? Because they want to sponsor this because then they get free tickets, and they want to spend all this money because then people will fly. Like, people don't realize that oftentimes, like, your marketing department is sort of spending a lot of your money for perks that are captured almost exclusively by the marketing department themselves.
Totally. Huh. So I think debates about the term growth hacking are largely not very interesting at all.
I think so.
There's a lot of interesting stuff though that growth hacking is borrowed from. So like, pre-selling or sort of the Kickstarter model. Like Ogilvy was doing that with like dry testing back in the day and see if anyone placed an order. They just wouldn't charge people.
Right.
People have been doing analytics. Direct sales marketers have been doing certain things. I think some of the most interesting stuff though that has come from growth hacking has been around the area of retention, but it's almost entirely around software as a service businesses. But do you have any interesting stories or tips for growth hacking around retention for like physical product businesses or info product businesses where it isn't just a automatic built-in recurring revenue model.
Yeah. I mean, that's the marketer's job has always just been to get people, and then it's like somebody else's responsibility to turn them into customers. And like, I think it's not only exhausting, it's so silly. It's like, why would you get another customer when you could just charge the customers that you have more, or convince them to spend more money? I'm not saying that you gouge them, right? But I think, obviously a lot of in the info product world, it's this sort of insane price back guarantees that if you actually look at the data, like nobody's actually ever utilizing. I think Zappos and Amazon have gotten really big. They're like, look, we don't care what it costs to keep this customer. Like Amazon has basically been investing in customer acquisition and customer retention for like 20 years in a row now, and not even begun to sort of escalate how much money they're going to get from those people. And the result has been, like, if I'm going to buy something, I think Amazon, I don't go on Google to find where I'm going to get it. I go on Amazon and I just buy it from them, right? And to say, like, Zappos, if you go on Zappos, the shoes are always more expensive, but people buy them from Zappos because they've invested so much in that customer. Like, I bought some shoes from Zappos last week, and they were supposed to arrive at 3 p.m. on like a Friday. And my wife drove out to my office to pick them up because I wasn't there, and like she waited like 30 minutes and it hadn't come. And so I emailed Zappos. I was like, hey, like, what the hell? And they were like, we're so sorry. Here's $100 gift card for your trouble. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is amazing, right? And it's like that just there made up. Like, I'm gonna have to buy shoes on Zappos for like the next like 5 years to pay for that. But that's the game that Amazon and Zappos is playing, and I think that's why they've eaten up so many of these competitors, because they're willing to sort of not lose money, but they're willing to invest in retention more than anyone else.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think another interesting way to do this is to take whatever you're doing and turn it into a subscription business. Like, there's the Uber and Airbnb of everything. I'm surprised there's not more like the Dollar Shave Club of, X, Y, and Z.
I mean, I think that's actually something Uber and Airbnb have not done well. It's like, why do people stay at certain hotels or fly certain airlines? It's because they have really great rewards programs. And I've spent tens of thousands of dollars staying in Airbnb units, and there's no upgrades, there's no additional services that I get. I don't get any fake internet points, or I don't get anything for staying with them over a hotel. And we all know that it's like business travelers that make up the sort of the highest margins on a lot of these products, and these companies have not invested in retaining those users. I think they're going to have to. And if I was a hotel chain, I would say, like, look, let's double down on those people. How do we steal them back away from those services?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's take one question from the audience, because I said I'd do that. Are there any questions? Let's see. Here we go. Okay. You wrote about T-Mobile's new marketing strategy previously.
I love T-Mobile. I think T-Mobile is the best. I love T-Mobile so much. I moved to a new house that's sort of out in the country, and we don't get T-Mobile service. So I paid out of my own pocket $500 to have this guy come install a giant antenna on my roof so I could keep T-Mobile. That's how much I love T-Mobile.
That's amazing. I hope they have that recorded. So how would you advise T-Mobile to accelerate their growth? That's the question.
So, like, why do I love T-Mobile? Free international calling, free international, like, you show up in any country, just turn on your phone. You get free music streaming. I'm not even remembering all the things I like. They'll pay to get you out of your old contract. They
Pink T-shirts.
Yes. So a bunch of awesome things. They don't have to have dumb celebrity commercials because the product's much better, right? So all this stuff, I really love that about T-Mobile. But I would say, like, what are they doing poorly? It's the fact that I have to pay $500 out of my own pocket to get service, right? So I think they've come up with a really great brand, a really great user proposition, and I think all of that is on point. But like, I remember when I was in retail, like it's like, it doesn't matter how nice your sales associates are if you don't have the shit that people want when they come into the store. That's bad customer service, right? And so I think for T-Mobile, like, they're gonna have to massively invest in their network. Like, even though I love it, like, I think that I've thought about getting an AT&T phone, even though, like, they steal money from me, because, like, at the end of the day, like, if I can't use my phone, it doesn't matter how much I like it, right? And so I think that's the thing that people have to think about. All this stuff is great, all this growth is amazing, But at the end of the day, if the thing doesn't work, if the trains don't run on time, it doesn't really matter.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this little Q&A.
Awesome, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Ryan Holiday.